Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today as we're talking about how to be safe and successful when playing the name game. So we're talking today about the intellectual property really behind choosing a name for use in your business or a name for your business. So not just business names, but when you name your products or your services or any of those names that describe what it is that you're selling, the names that you build up a reputation in. And it's there's a lot more to it than just finding a really cool name that you love. So we're going to dig a little deeper into that today and see just what's involved. Let me make sure I didn't lose my mouse. There we go. So first, as always with these webinars, a little bit about me in case you don't know who I am or haven't seen me much. I am a homeschooling mum, so I always put that warning first because there is a strong chance that a little person will try and pop in sometime during this webinar because they need me. But I've done everything I can. This is not my first webinar, so I'm getting better and better, and they're getting older and older, and the interruptions are getting less frequent. So we'll see how we go. By profession, I am a lawyer and a mediator. After many years working with a small country law firm doing all of their business law, I basically got disillusioned with the adversarial nature of it all. I didn't like the fact that everything was argument. Now I've got my kids arguing all the time, which gives me plenty of mediation practice. But everything in my work was all about arguing and trying to win and to get one better than you. So I went and qualified, did my master's in law and qualified as a mediator because I am a massive believer in just working together to collaboratively approach a problem and looking for a mutually acceptable win-win solution. So that has really shaped the way I've built my career as a lawyer in the online entrepreneurial field, and which brings us to what I am today, which is an entrepreneur just like you guys. I absolutely love this online space. I love the new paradigm of business that we're creating, which is all about caring and concern for others and supporting each other. And and it was actually discovering this world that allowed me to forgive myself for becoming a lawyer and start practicing law in a way that I love. So I'm really hoping I'll be able to share some massively useful information with you today. And we'll see how we go. Did I press record? I'm not sure that I did. Let me double check. Excuse me. Yes, I did. I am so silly. Thank you. And yes, I'm still a bit of a scattered, ditzy person, but under it all, I have a lot of study and education to back that up. Let's go into the real stuff that we're here today. So what are we going to discuss? We're going to look at why are business names so important? Why do we need to worry about them? Why can't we just name stuff whatever we feel like and, just run with it, run with the first name that comes to mind? Then we're going to look at what makes a really great business name. What are the things you have to think about when choosing a name? How can you simplify the process? Because I've done it myself. It can take hours of brainstorming and heart searching and, real deep contemplation and digging to try and come up with a name that you love. And then you think, well, is it going to work? And second guessing and on and on and on. So what are the things to remember when choosing a name? What makes it really great? And thirdly, we're going to look at the how. How can I make sure that this name that I love, that I have chosen, is mine alone? And there's two parts to that. First, there's how can I make sure that no one else is using it to begin with? How can I make sure it's safe for me to use? And then the second part of that is how can I protect it for the future and make sure it continues to be only mine? So if I'm sure that it's a name that is mine to use, how can I keep it that way? So, why are names important? Names are our identity. aren't they? When you think of yourself, when people think of you, they think of your name first. And it's the same with your business. Names are how people recognize you. So when you start creating a business identity, or even when you're creating an identity around a particular service, so for example, Contracts That Care, which is one of my services, when you choose that name, you're choosing the thing that you're going to pin the entire identity of that service on. It's going to form the focus for your marketing, and it's going to affect every aspect of that marketing. So it all needs to be integrated and cohesive. The name needs to fit with your branding, it needs to fit with your personality, it needs to fit with your values and vision for that business, because the name is an authentic part of that business. It is the thing that's going to be the public face of what you sell. And in selling and marketing that name, you begin to build up a reputation. So then you sell it, you deliver on it, you get testimonials, you get all of that experience of building up and feedback from it in the marketplace, and that builds up your reputation in that name. And the reputation in the name is what brings people back to buy from you again. And that's your goodwill. And goodwill has value. When you go to sell a business, goodwill is one of the assets of the business that is valued, along with your photocopier and your computers and whatever else. The goodwill, and for online entrepreneurs, goodwill is everything. The goodwill is the belief in your customer's belief that you provide a really quality service and that you are worth coming back to again and again. You're worth recommending to others. You're worth shouting from the rooftops how great your work is. And all of that identity, the marketing, the reputation, and the goodwill, they are all pinned on the name that you choose for your business. So you can see that names really are an essential element of being in business. And this is even particularly important when we're in this online world, because we don't have that bricks and mortar sort of presence. I mean, names are still important for bricks and mortar presence, but for us, there is our identity, our reputation, our marketing, our goodwill. It's all a bit more intangible. It's all a bit more not something that you can just grasp and hold on to. So the name becomes even more important, because the name is who we are as a seller, a trader of services or goods. And I'm using services because most of my clients are services. Hi, Jules. We're just reaching through. We've just been talking about what makes a business name important and why business names are important. But now we're looking at, I'll just shut my email down. I left it open in case someone tried to contact me, but don't need it making big dingles all over the place. So yeah, we're moving on to what makes a great business name. How do we know, when we've started brainstorming these names, how do we know that this name is going to do it for us, that it's going to be worthy of pinning all of that identity, that marketing, that reputation, and that goodwill on? Will it support it all? And so the factors to consider are, firstly, is it common or is it unique? Someone's just going to mute you, Jules. There we go. Gotcha. Okay. Is the name common or unique? And that's going to it sounds really obvious. Like a common name. Common names are descriptive, which means they tend to describe what the service is doing. So, for example, if you call yourself a soul business coach, and we've all seen people out there using names like that, or a light worker, they tend to be descriptive names. And the problem with descriptive names is descriptive names are actually keywords. And those keywords are words that every other competitor in the marketplace, everybody else who's doing the same role as you, providing the same service, they're all going to want to use those same descriptive keywords. So if you can avoid something that's descriptive, or if you can add an element that takes that descriptive keyword out of common and into unique, that is going to serve you well. So for example, if I'd called my contracts stuff, contracts for entrepreneurs, it's not going to work. It's too descriptive. Or commercial contracts, it's never going to work. By adding contracts that care, it's a bit surprising. It pulls it out of common into unique. It's something that's unexpected. The other problem with common descriptive type of names is that they are noisy. When you search for them, you'll find you get lots and lots of hits. When you search a search engine like Google, when you search through Facebook or Instagram, when you search hashtags, you'll get lots of hits. You'll get lots of people all using that name. They're all shouting it from their own business. Look at me, I'm a light worker. Look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm a business coach, I'm a business coach, I'm a business coach. I work with soul branding. I work with whatever it is, whatever field you're in. If you think about it for a minute, you'll be able to pick some really descriptive, really noisy words that everyone is using, everyone wants to use to describe their business. So when your clients try and find you in that noisy marketplace, they're going to have to filter through lots and lots of hits. If they know they're looking for you, you're going to be harder to find. And if you do choose a descriptive, noisy type of name, you have to realize that you're going to have to work a lot harder to really establish that reputation and that goodwill, to really get that identity to be associated with you, because there's so many other people that it's already associated with. And over time, even if you do create that unique identity, you do get known for being that awesome holistic business coach or whatever else it is, that descriptive noisy name, and you get known, you've got a following, you're big, you can't stop other people using that name. So you're going to be constantly feeling other people chipping away at the edges of your identity, because they also have a right to use those descriptive words. They have a right to be part of that noisy marketplace. So how can you shift yourself out of that noisy marketplace and into a marketplace where you stand out on your own, where everyone hears the name and knows immediately that that is you? And that's where you come in, when you find a name that is unique, one that is special only to you, one that can really, really hold a strong identity, one that is easy for you to market because it's so authentic, it's so integral to who you are, it's so personal to you and your business. And then one that your reputation, any reputation you build, it's not being scattered amongst all the other people in your industry. That reputation is yours alone because it's pinned to that unique name. And therefore the goodwill that comes with it, that asset that you're building, is undiluted. It's stronger because it is concentrated around that one unique name of yours. So a business name, so one of the easiest ways to find a unique business name is to use your own name and to market your business through your personality. And we've already all seen that. I do it myself. And it's a very easy way to start out with that uniqueness. The problem is that even if our business name is our own name, we're going to want to launch products. We're going to want to launch services, like our courses and other things that we do. And in some cases, it's okay to just say, Michelle Whitehead, legal advice. People know me, they know my reputation, my goodwill is there in my name. and a descriptive name for the service is enough. But at other times, when I want to attract people to the thing that I'm offering outside myself, if I want it to start building up its own reputation and its own goodwill, if I want people to be talking about it as a thing by itself, if I want to increase the number of ways that I can be recognized, then finding that unique name for my services, like Contracts That Care, is going to really allow me to expand my reach. So even if you are using your own name in your business, there's really good reasons why you need to think about choosing names for your business and what makes a great name. So what does make a great name? A great name is one, or when you're looking, how can you choose a unique name? It's easy to say, choose a name that's unique, but how do you actually do that? What do you look for? So the best business names, the most trademarkable names, and we'll come to trademarks in a little while and I'll tell you why that's important, are those that are fanciful, so they're made up. Think of Google. Think of Adidas. All of those names are words that are made up. They've been pulled out of the ether. You can make up names in many ways. One of the ones I like to play with my clients is to choose a keyword that you've decided is too noisy and then search for it in other languages and sort of, take it out of your language and find some variation on it and then combine that with another word and mix it up and make up something that's brand new. Use a random word generator and play with that. All of some of the best names are that or use acronyms like IBM or whatever else. You can really get imaginative, you can get creative, and the more imaginative and creative your name is, the better it's going to be in terms of uniqueness. The better it's going to be at placing you in the market, the stronger it's going to be for hanging that reputation you're building on. Another way is to make names that are surprising. So surprising can be words taken out of context, like Apple, Nike. There's a connection there, goddess of victory. Nike's the goddess of victory, but here she is in running shoes. So it's surprising. It's a new way of using the word that may have some clever connection with your business, but it's not the expected connection. So it's taking it out of the ordinary, out of the common, and into that unique zone. And the other thing to think about is not just to choose one name and think, this is it, this is perfect, I've got it. It's often better to find yourself a short list. And so that you've got a few names to work with, and I'll show you why in just a minute. But once you've got that short list, go through it and prune it back, because then there's a few other things you need to know about your name to check through before you start getting excited about it. The first one is how easy it is to pronounce. Because if you have a tongue twister of a name, you are never going to do a Facebook Live in your life or a webinar, because it needs to roll off the tongue. It needs to be easier to say. It needs to be the sort of thing that when you're at the Lady Posse meetup or at a networking meeting, you can just quickly tell people what it is that you do and have it roll off. You can have your clients tell each other about it without trying to get all tangled up in how is this word said. The second one is spelling. And for the same reason. You don't want a name that's so easy to misspell that every time you're trying to, you're constantly correcting the spelling, you're constantly getting it wrong, you're constantly having to spell it out for clients, whatever. You need something that's really easy to pronounce, really easy to spell. And the third one is really easy to remember. Because if it's not memorable, if it's just plain and boring and dull, then it's not going to stand out. It's not going to have that unique effect. It's not going to be something that instantly pops into your client's head when they want to recommend you to, there's that girl, she does this thing that you need. Her service is blum. And if it's unique, If it's surprising, it's clever, if it's imaginative, then it's going to pop into her mind. She's going to find it easy to pronounce it, easy to write it down. You know, the other person's going to go onto Google, they're going to type it in, and you're going to come up as the first hit. That's what we need for a great business name. Not, you know, type it in and get 60,000 hits, and, you know, you've got the slightly misspelt version that they've got to try and now, how did that go again? It just doesn't work as well. So this stuff that I'm telling you is nothing new. This is a chart that was drawn up in 1950 for how to test your trademark and see how good it is legally. And the same goes for business names. So you can see it's got this nice inventive little thing. So colour names, national flags, or names of people without permission are bad. It's descriptive. Descriptive can become distinctive by long usage, but that's where you're building through the noise and forging a reputation regardless. Yeah, and so you can see I'll actually send out a copy of this chart to the mailing list, because it's a good one to keep in your back pocket when you're pruning through your shortlist. So the most excellent names you can see there in the middle are suggestive. So suggestive but not descriptive. It's a really thin line to work. You know, does it suggest what it is that you do? Does it imply something about what you do, like Nike, without being descriptive and running into that noisy sort of world where everyone else needs to use the same name? And in that case, the coined word or symbol like Apple can be that great source of original trademark ideas. Also arbitrary. You know, Apple is arbitrary. It's not descriptive or suggestive at all. It's just an arbitrary mark. There's no relationship. Nike would be an example of a suggestive mark, and Apple would be an example of an arbitrary mark. So an arbitrary dictionary word is also an excellent source, because the entire language is available for your use to choose from if it's not used in a descriptive sense. But at the same time, if there's something suggestive about it, it helps. Okay. And you can get lucky. So you can get lucky with a distinctive, although descriptive, dictionary word, which is what I've got with Contracts That Care. It's a dictionary word. It's distinctive, but it is also descriptive. So I need to be lucky to use it through long usage and increase its distinctiveness. Does that make sense? You also can't, you know, you can't choose other people's names. Or you can, but you need to be careful doing that. You can get lucky when you choose someone else's name. You can't use geography so well. So I can't call myself New South Wales lawyer and expect that to be a great thing to build a business around, because every other New South Wales lawyer needs to use it. Unless I really want to push through that noise and stick with this name. Okay, so think about what works. Have a look, start noticing brand names. Start noticing people's product and service names. Start noticing, you know, start assessing them against this, this sort of framework that we've just been mapping out. So if we look at Coca-Cola, it's a made-up word. It's fanciful and it's unique, and it's presented in a unique brand form, and it's acquired distinctiveness through long use. So it's got everything going for it. If we look at Ivory Soap and go back, oh, I can't go back. If we look at the Ivory Soap one, so ivory is a word taken out of context. It's an arbitrary, but it's also suggestive, because it suggests clean and white and fresh. So it's a word taken out of context, but it is suggestive. KO there, KO chocolate, is a made-up word. Shell is a word taken completely out of context, but it's acquired that descriptiveness through use. They've built up a massive brand around it. Canada Dry, it's descriptive, but it's suggestive, and it is surprising, because why would drinks be dry? So it's got that surprise element. Ford is a name, but it has acquired the distinctiveness through long use, and it's actually also a word. It's used out of context. It's also suggestive. It suggests, you know, crossing rivers, going forward. Yeah, so Texaco. So there's a combination of words. They've taken, instead of calling themselves Texas Company, Texas Motor Oil Company, they've squished it together and created a new word which is imaginative and which works. So just keeping your eyes open as you're driving around, as you're browsing the internet, you'll start to notice a lot more about names and start to be really able to distinguish what makes a great name. You know, Bell, public telephone. So Bell is a dictionary word, but it's suggestive. It's suggestive of telephones. So yeah, just have fun with it. I find it heaps of fun these days, just going through in Offer Day in the Heart-Centered group or something like that, and just looking at what really does make a great name. Who has used a great one? And my favourite example of all is Claire Barton's Batshit Crazy, because it's imaginative, it's suggestive, because, you know, what she does is batching. It's teaching you how to batch your marketing, but it's also surprising, and it's absolutely memorable. So yeah, start looking around, start getting familiar with what makes a truly great name. Who's got a great name? And the more you notice that, the more you assess what makes this name great, the more you will start to really develop that instinct for how to name your own businesses and services. So once you've got your shortlist, I'll just check in with you. Can you let me know in the chat box, am I going okay? Is there any questions so far before we move on to the next step? Is that all making sense? All good? Anybody got any questions? And I'll start moving on to the next step. And yeah, just if you've got any questions, pop them into the chat box and we'll move on from there. So what next? You've got your shortlist. You've got your names. They're imaginative. They're original. They're unique. They're surprising. You think they're awesome. But how do you know which one to actually go with? And this is why you need a couple, because you don't want to get one name that you're absolutely set on. You think, this is brilliant. This is the perfect name, the best name ever. And then you get to this step, the due diligence step, and suddenly the brakes are on. You can't actually have that name because it belongs to someone else. So this is where we do the backwards searching. Who is using this name? What are they using it for? Does it stop me using it? And the first step is, can I actually register this name in the practical ways that make business possible? And your first step needs to be ASIC, which is where you search for business name registrations. Because under Australian commercial law, you cannot trade under a name that is not your own name. And this includes variations of your name. So if you're using your middle name or a nickname to do business, you've actually got to register it as a business name. You can't trade under, like when I was a kid, I used to spell my nickname Shell, S-C-H-E-L-L-E. And everybody knew me as Shell. So I couldn't trade under Shell Law or just, you know, Shell Whitehead, because it's not my actual proper name. I would need to register it as a business name before I could trade under it. And the reason they have business names and the reason you're required to register it is to protect consumers. Because when people buy from you, they have the right to know that there is a real entity, a real person or company behind that service that they can have recourse against if something goes wrong. They need to know who is the real person offering this service. And so if you are using any kind of, and there are unscrupulous businesses out there that sell a whole pile of shonky products and then disappear overnight. But they can be traced back in Australia because they are registered through their business name. The other thing to think about is domain names and things like that. Can you get all of the practical stuff you need? Can you register the domain? Does someone else own the domain? And it includes variations of the domain, so the .com and the .com.au and blah, blah, blah. So, for example, michellewhitehead.com is actually an American wedding photographer, and michellewhitehead.com.au is me. But I need to know that. I need to do those searches in advance, because if michellewhitehead.com had also been a lawyer, that could have been a big problem for people trying to find me. It would have really increased the noise around using my name. So yeah, do your ASIC search first. Make sure you can register it as a business name. Make sure you can trade under that name, or you're done before you start. Do your domain name searches to make sure that if you're going to be an online business, or even if you're not these days, the online world is so important that you are going to be able to use that name online. You're going to have a home to present your identity to the world. The next step is to search the trademark databases. Now, the reason you search these is because you need to know who has registered this name, who else is trading under it and has claimed unique ownership over it, and in what classes. Because the intellectual property boards globally have divided up all the possible goods and services into the world into 45 categories that they call classes. And these categories or classes have all sorts of things lumped together into them. So class 44, for example, is all of the types of alternative healing, but it includes and all types of medical services and veterinary services and animal services and all of that sort of stuff. Class 45 is all the professional services. So we've got everything from lawyers to funeral directors to architects to anything else that is sort of a professional type of service. Class 9 is all sorts of electronic devices and such like, but it includes podcasts. Class 16 is anything that can be printed on paper or cardboard. So that includes things like your workshop manuals, your training manuals, your books that you publish. So you can see when you register a trademark, it's only protected in the classes that you register it in. So finding that there's a similar name in the trademark databases is not necessarily fatal so long as it's in a completely different class. But it is important to know, it's important to search both the Australian and the global trademark databases, because that it gives you an indication of how noisy the name is in the business. If you come back with no hits at all, then you're laughing. And it also shows you where the danger is, because people who have registered the trademark are more likely to take action to prevent you using it. And that action can be extremely expensive. Businesses have gone bankrupt because they started using a name that had been trademarked in a similar location with a similar class of service. So searching your trademark databases is essential. And then the third thing to search is the areas where your competitors might be. So that's your search engines and your social media searches. If there are 300, if the hashtag for the name you're thinking of has been used millions of times, it's a noisy marketplace. If you can't get the Facebook name, if there's a Facebook group already using that name, if there's 15 different businesses all over the world using that name, it increases the noise. So those are the main searches you need to do. And this is what I do in my due diligence consultations. I open up about 15, 20 screens, which link to all of these different types of category of search. And we go through and we play detective, and it's a lot of fun. And you can do it yourself, just playing detective, searching your name, searching through who's using it, what are they using it for, what is the implications of that use for my business. Awesome. Any questions about searching at this stage? No. The next thing we're going to talk about is actually owning your brand. So we've talked about registering a business name and why it's important that you're able to do that, but registering that business name only gives you the right to use the name in the business. It doesn't give you any ownership rights. You have no right to stop anyone else using the name. And the same with registering a domain name. It doesn't give you the right to exclusive ownership of that name. You can't stop people using variations on the theme. They can spell 3 letters different and have a domain name that says exactly the same thing. So how can you own your brand? How can you make it yours exclusively? How can you actually keep the identity that you've created? When you've found the name you've used, it's passed all your due diligence searches, you've got it. What happens next? How can you own it? The first thing is to create a distinctive appearance for it, to actually create the branding, the visual identity, to create your marketing strategy, to get clear on your values and vision behind that name, and to really get started on working out what the identity is going to look like for that name. The next thing to think about is how it exists as a trademark. There are 2 types of trademarks. There are unregistered trademarks and there are registered trademarks. An unregistered trademark gives you the right to bring legal action in the jurisdiction where you're using it, so the location. And in Australia, that can come down to just statewide, or it could be national, but it's not international. So you can start, at the moment you find the name you like, you can start putting, and you've done your searches and you're sure it's yours and it's unique and you're going to start building that identity, stick a TM on it. Claim it as an unregistered trademark because that gives you some rights. Even if you don't stick the TM, you're still building that reputation, but a TM is actually stepping up and making your claim to ownership visible and obvious to people. It's saying, this is a name I care about and I plan to defend it if you try and take it from me or if you use it. When you defend an unregistered trademark, when you bring action, you're bringing it under the consumer law, and you're basically claiming that, or you're bringing evidence to prove that you have built up a unique reputation in that name. You have the identity, you own the goodwill. It's an asset, that name is an asset of your business. But that someone else is using that asset without your permission, that they are attempting to pass themselves off as you, pretend to be you, trade on your reputation. They're causing confusion in the marketplace. They are messing with the minds of your customers and your clients. They're taking business away from you. And that activity is causing you loss and damage. and that as a result, they should either compensate you for the actual loss or damage that you've suffered, and you need to provide evidence that quantifies that, so that shows exactly what your losses are, or they need to account for profits. They need to prove how much they have made through using your name unlawfully, and that gets and that you have a right for that money to be paid to you, because if you'd been allowed to use your name lawfully in your own unique rights, then that was money that you would have made, and they've made illegally by using your name. When you register a trademark, you change the TM to a little R in a circle, or in brackets if your whatever program you're using doesn't actually do the little pop into a circle thing. A registered name also has the same rights to bring legal action, but it has more rights, because trademarks exist under legislation, which is part of our written law, the statutes that are passed down by Parliament. So in the Trademark Registration Acts, you actually have the mere fact that you have registered a trademark gives you an automatic right to bring legal action. You don't have to prove all of those other things. You don't have to prove that you've built up the reputation. You don't have to prove that they've caused you damage. Because you've registered it, it is yours. It also gives you online protection globally, because most internet service providers, most large search engines, most social media platforms, if you can say, this person is using my registered trademark name without permission, they will take the page down. They will shut it down. So, I mean, that you can still get into arguments there if the person was using the name before you registered it, or if it's a descriptive name that everyone has the right to use. This is going to be harder to do. And it's also going to be harder for you to actually get through the registration process. You're going to have built up a really big history of use to get over that hurdle, or to have a really unique graphical representation that makes your identity distinct enough that they will agree to register it. But once it is registered, that online protection is there for you to just reach out and say, look, they're using my trademark, take their page down, stop them. And in most cases, they will comply. It gives you national protection. So we heard before how if you've got an unregistered trademark, it may actually be combined, it may actually be limited to the state where you're actually doing business. You may only be able to stop other people in that state. People might argue that they have the geographical distinctness means there's no actual competitive shared market when you're trying to defend an unregistered trademark. When you register, you're protected against the whole of Australia. It makes it easier for you to file your trademark internationally. So there's an expedited process through a treaty called the Madrid Protocol. And that means that a trademark that is registered in a country that is signatory to the Madrid Protocol, which Australia is, can have expedited registration in any other country that is also a signatory to the Madrid Protocol. And that is most of the world. So it actually, and it also, the other advantage is that your Australian lawyer who has processed your trademark application can actually access this, and so you don't actually have to find a lawyer in another country to process the application for you. It can all be done through IP Australia, or you can do it yourself through IP Australia using the Madrid Protocol. So it's much simpler. You can do it all in English, which is a massive, massive advantage. It deters infringement because you exist then on those trademark databases. So when anyone else is doing their due diligence, they're picking up on the fact that you have registered that trademark and it would be dangerous for them to use it. anyone who sees your name and thinks, oh, that's a cool name, I'd like to use that for my business, they see the little R and they think, ooh, can't do. They have ownership of that. They've got exclusive ownership of that. I will get in trouble if I infringe on their rights. So it has that deterrent effect. It warns people away. And finally, there are financial advantages. So if you need to license your intellectual property, if you're expanding your business and you want other people to be able to use elements of what you do, you can give them the licensed right to use your exclusive name, and it's got that extra appeal to it because they know it is exclusive. If you're going for a business loan or things like that, a registered trademark is an asset of your business. If you're actually building up a business that you want to sell someday, a registered trademark, having registered ownership of the name, is massive. I have a client at the moment whose application to register their trademark is being stalled because someone else who has said he's happy for them to coexist on the register because they've got this long history of trading in that name, he won't give them permission until he concludes negotiations for $1 billion contract, because having that exclusive right to the name is that important to the negotiations for the contract. So it has all kinds of commercial advantages that, you know, may not appear to be relevant at the time, but over time, because your trademark lasts for 10 years, they can actually grow over time as your business expands. So the trademark process, and we're running out of time. I've gone longer than I thought I was going to, so I'm sorry about that. This is a quick summary of the trademark process and the costs involved. So first we start with the due diligence consultation, which I charge $334. It lasts an hour and we do all of the searches. We also look into what you're actually producing or selling under that name, and we decide which classes are relevant for you. If you choose to go ahead, and I produce a reporting letter which sets all of that stuff out. If you choose to go ahead with registering your trademark, then we submit the application through IP Australia. We use the Head Start application, which gives you a pre-assessment. And it costs $200 per trademark per class for IP Australia fees, and I charge $220 for my fees. The reason we use the Head Start application, even though the Bear application is minusculely cheaper, is because it gives you that limited opportunity to amend applications. They warn you if there are any likely barriers to registration, and they give you an opportunity to fix them to a certain extent. Next, it progresses to stage 2, which is the actual examination. And to progress to stage 2, you pay IP Australia fees of $130 per trademark per class. So IP Australia fees all up are $330 per trademark per class to actually register. At this time, the application becomes visible in the trademark databases, and it's backdated to the date that you put your application in. Once it's gone through the examination stage, it goes into the examination stage is actually a long wait. They do thorough checking. The trademark examiners really go deep searching. It can take, 5 months of searching before they'll progress to the acceptance stage. When they progress to acceptance stage, I charge the another $220 of my fees, and then it reaches stage 4. And stage 4, when it's accepted, they advertise the mark in the Trademark Journal and they open it up for objections. So this is everybody else's opportunity who's searching the Trademark Journal to say, no, you can't register it. I have a reason why. And they have to pay an objection fee to get their application for the objection heard. So it's not just sort of a random objection. They have to seriously have a reason why you shouldn't allow it to be registered. And then it progresses to stage 5. If all objections are answered, or if there are no objections, it progresses to stage 5, registration, where I charge the final $220 of my fees. So once it's registered, it lasts for 10 years. And at the moment, it costs you $400 to renew it. That may go up over time, but that's the current fees. So for an average application would find 3 classes. So for example, class 44 for a nutritionist who runs online courses. So they're going to go for class 41, which is adult education and training, workshops, conferences, seminars, all of that sort of thing. And they run a podcast, so they're going to go for class 9. So that's 3 classes, 330 per trademark per class. So they're looking at $990, which is 330 by 3. We've also got our due diligence consultation at the front there. So 330, then 330 times 3, $990, and then 660, which is my fees. So an average trademark application with no problems, just sails straight through, costs around $1,980, so just under $2,000. I have a number of clients who wanted to do this, but this is not in their budget at the moment. So I've also had clients that I've helped with processing it themselves. IP Australia is trying to make it really easy for you to process this yourself, but a lot of my clients come to me and say, I need someone to hold my hand while I'm doing it. And I thought, well, why can't I offer this as a group service that gives you the advantage of my knowledge and experience with this, and also that sort of group brainstorming and support. So this is where this course was born, and I've called it Are You Ready? For registered, Are You Ready? So I'm trying for clever and surprising and suggestive with my course name. So I charge $550, and it includes a due diligence consultation. So due diligence consultation and my fees for processing a trademark are $990. If you join the due diligence, if you join Are You Ready, it comes down to $550. So you're saving $400 on my fees, but you still have to pay IP Australia fees, which is that $330 per trademark per class. If you just want to go ahead in one class, you get the $330. You can just do it for the $880, which would be the total cost. But you need, and you can always come back. You can't add classes. Every time you process, every time you want to register your trademark in a new class, it's a new application. So it starts from scratch. But because you get lifetime membership of the group, you could register in one class and you could come back later and start a new application in another class by joining a new round of the course. I'm planning to offer it at least yearly and possibly quarterly if there's enough interest. And it will just sort of roll over. There'll be constant presence in the Facebook group, special Facebook group for it. A trademark application that whole process, that 5-step process, lasts 7.5 months. You cannot get a trademark registered faster than 7.5 months unless you've got a really, really good reason and you're prepared to pay extra fees. So within the course, there'll be group calls for due diligence. There'll be group calls that'll help you choose your classes. There'll be group calls as you lodge your application. I'll walk you through it. I'll share my screen. I'll record it. I'll show you step by step, this is what you need to do and how to do it. There'll also be that private Facebook group for ongoing support. As I said, lifetime membership. You join in future rounds and you only pay IP Australia's fees. So you could do future trademark for only that $330 per trademark per class. If there's troubleshooting, I'll offer you a free one-on-one session. So if a problem arises, if you get stuck, if you get an opposition, if you get a name that's rejected, then we'll have that free one-on-one session to work through what the problem is. And if it's a problem that can't be sorted in a quick free one-on-one session, then I'll discount my legal fees if you need me to actually act for you in negotiating with someone to, for example, to let your name coexist on a register, as happened with the other client I mentioned earlier. The only way to get into this course is to have book an interview with me. And the reason for this is I don't want to sell you this course unless you've got a reasonable chance of success. So you need to actually have a name that we are both pretty sure has a good chance of being registered before we join in, before we even start the due diligence. So basically we go through all of that, check, is your name fanciful? Is it too noisy? If it's too noisy, then you're going to have to really convince me that the group is right for you. But you can still try and convince me, and I'm still willing to be convinced. It just depends on what we think your chances of success are. So I'll pop that link into the chat box in case anyone's interested in actually booking the interview. And other than that, that's pretty much all we were going to talk about today. If you just want to keep in touch with me, you're welcome to join my Business Serenity Facebook group. I've been a bit absent there this month because my batched posts ran out. Claire from Batshit Crazy will be mad at me. But I actually just got super busy. And unfortunately, I have to rely on my identity to carry me over through periods when I'm so busy working in my business that I don't have time to market my business. So that's another advantage of a name and an identity and goodwill. Goodwill tides you over in those busy times when you don't actually have time to be present in your business. Okay, so that's my webinar on playing the name game, how to safely and successfully choose names for use in your business. Looking at what makes a really great name, how to make sure that name is exclusively yours, and how to protect it in the future. I hope the information I've shared today has been really useful for you. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me through Facebook or my website or via email. I'm always happy to hear from you and to answer any questions you might have. And if you're interested in my DIY trademark course, Are You Ready? I would love to hear from you. Or alternatively, if you want to book a due diligence consultation, or you would like to have me process a trademark application for you, that would be awesome as well. So yeah, anything you need, I'm here to help with for all your intellectual property needs. Talk to you next time. Bye.